Next up, we have Ted Smith. Ted Smith runs Hempology 101. He's pretty well known on his own, and he's going to introduce himself probably better than I ever could. So here's Ted Smith.
Hi, thanks, and thanks for having me here. So I guess I got a half an hour today to talk about why cannabis and policies related to cannabis are so important, not just to me, but I think to you and to others around you. And unfortunately, most of the world doesn't realize yet how important cannabis can be. And right now, we're using cannabis quite a bit in Canada, and it is talked a lot about in the media. But I'm going to give you, I guess, a brief summary of hemp, medical marijuana, and marijuana in general, and let you know just why it is so incredibly important. Now, the reason cannabis is illegal is not because of what we smoke. Oh, okay, thanks. Well, I'm going to hug my insulation, but thanks. Cannabis is illegal because of its cousin hemp. And it is because hemp can be made into not just insulation like I'm holding in front of you here, and this is hemp plywood. It's made in China. This is made in Nepal. All the clothing except for my shoes are made out of hemp. I eat hemp. I've been a vegetarian for 16 years. Hemp contains all the essential fatty acids and amino acids that you need to survive. In fact, there's a quote in Genesis about how God made seeds such that you can eat them instead of meat. And hemp is not only a better protein than most sources of meat, but it also doesn't contain a lot of the different steroids, growth hormones, colors and stuff that are put into meat. And so as a replacement for meat alone, hemp is a huge threat to a number of industries that are right now controlling our political environment. And if we look at the number of industries that hemp alone threatens, not just directly but indirectly, the list is vast. And the list started with pulp and paper. Right now, we're mowing down our trees, not just in North America, but around the world. Rainforests are being cut down at a faster rate every day to make trees so that we can print newspapers and books and other things that we could be printing on not just recycled paper, but renewable resources like hemp. And we need to be looking towards renewable resources instead of just using up what is available in the natural environment. And so right now in British Columbia, we could be employing farmers to produce the pulp that's being used. And the industries know that. In fact, again, we could go not just from pulp and paper and clothing and cotton industries, but the petrochemical companies, the oil that's pressed out of seed could be used not just for paints and varnishes and soaps, but it could also be used for fuel. The reason that alcohol was prohibited in the 1920s wasn't entirely because of the effects of alcohol. Alcohol was prohibited in large part because it threatened fossil fuel companies, because people were distilling their own fuel as well as their own alcohol, and they're quite self-sufficient in doing so. And by prohibiting alcohol, they stopped farmers from making their own biofuels, and some of those farmers turned to seed oils. And so switching to the Reefer Madness campaign was going after the next and last alternative to using fossil fuels. And one of the main reasons that hemp is prohibited is because it not only is such a excellent fuel for burning and engines, but it also is one of the fastest producing biomass plants in the world. There are some plants that produce biomass faster, some algae that can grow faster, but when it comes to the oil production, there's few that can compare with the hemp plant. And certainly hemp can be grown in most of the world. It can be grown certainly from the equator to up north, unlike a lot of other crops like corn that have got very small regions that they could be grown. And so the reason that hemp is illegal and cannabis is illegal is because of all of these other products that farmers, like the family that I come from in Ontario, could be growing a plant that essentially would be producing all of their energy needs. So they could be producing their energy from the generators that were burning it, their tractors could run from it, they could be feeding their animals from it, because you'd press out the seed oil out of the seed, and leftover mash could feed your animals, and it's also what we would be eating ourselves instead of meat. And so we would be cutting down massively on our chemical use, which would be very good for us both individually and collectively, because right now our food industry is producing and using massive amounts of chemical in the production of food, and we don't need to do that. And so one of the beauties of hemp is that it grows so fast, it outgrows most of the other weeds, so you don't have to put on herbicide, and the actual trichomes on it and THC in fact repel insects. You don't need insecticide in the same way. There's a few bugs that don't mind it, but really it's not something that you need to use any of these chemicals, and you can naturally fertilize it by rotating it with other crops. And so the cannabis hemp plant alone would make farmers completely self-sufficient with their energies, and would at the same time give them fiber that they could sell that could be again made into building materials, clothing. It could be mixed into concrete for foundation. There's a hemp house on Salt Spring Island, and all sorts of houses being built with hemp as well. It can be used in everything except for the electrical wiring and glass. So the reason that cannabis is illegal is because of hemp, and I encourage everybody to do as much as they can to not only encourage the use of hemp, but to buy hemp products, to wear it, to use the soap, to embrace this plant, because it is a very loving and very good plant that has kept me alive and healthy and strong for a long time, and I anticipate doing that for a long time to come. And so cannabis is incredibly important for hemp. Again, using hemp, embracing hemp, if our agricultural community is really turned on it, if we as consumers bought hemp up every day and couldn't get enough of it, it would really turn around our agricultural communities and would make our planet a lot healthier as well, because we'd have better fuels that wouldn't be polluting the planet and wouldn't be using all these chemicals like we are now. But that's not the only reason that cannabis is important. The other main reason that cannabis is important, or other one, is for medical marijuana. And most of you here, hopefully walking around and sitting, are healthy and happy people. But hopefully a lot of us will live long enough to start getting arthritis or other problems. No one wants cancer, but a large number of us are going to be fighting cancer at one time or another. Certainly my girlfriend is a cancer survivor. And it's something that, because of the amount of pollution in the environment, we should all be eating and thinking about what to do to prevent cancer from happening inside of ourselves. And a lot of that is from the chemical kind of content that's in our water, food, and air around us. And so anyway, cannabis is an incredible medicine that we're just barely beginning to start understanding now. And I've learned a lot. 17 years ago, I started the first medical dispensary in Canada. The Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club now helps 4,500 patients. We work in Victoria. We have a storefront there. We have about 20 growers that work for the club. So it's a fairly large organization. After 20 years, I started it in a van, and it just grew. We now have 30 food and skin products that we make that are alternatives to smoking. And really, it's in these alternatives, the edible and topical products, that the real medicine comes out. Because cannabis is anti-inflammatory, it's a muscle relaxant, it's a painkiller, it's an antibiotic, it's antifungal, it's antioxidant, it's antiseptic, it's anti-carcinogenic. Cannabis has a lot going on for it when you're consuming it. And not all these benefits are coming from THC. THC is what gets us sort of the high, and so a lot of people know about THC because people try to grow plants that have high THC counts, or make extracts like different kind of honey oils that have got a lot of THC in it. And that's been the main focus of people, at least recreational users. But THC doesn't have all the medical benefits in the plant. For example, CBD is another cannabinoid, it's called, that's got a great medical benefit. CBD is a great anti-inflammatory. A lot of strains contain a lot of CBD, and some of them contain little THC, so they're not very psychoactive. In fact, the new Gold Rush is towards that. And so that is plants that don't get patients high, because a lot of people that get sick are not cannabis users, but they get cancer or some other condition that they want to use cannabis for. And so they just want to relieve their symptoms without the psychoactive effects of THC. And so they're starting to develop strains that are doing that. And so the anti-inflammatory benefits in particular really kick in when you start to eat it. When you smoke it, you ruin a lot of the benefits of cannabis in the smoking. Or not ruin it, but you burn them up very quickly. So 20 minutes after smoking, they're starting to dissipate. An hour later, they've mostly left your body. If you cook your cannabis properly, the cannabinoids stay in your bloodstream for 4 to 6 hours. The lingering effects are 8 to 12 hours. And for people that have got different medical problems, that can be really great, especially say the anti-inflammatory benefits kick in if you've got brain injuries, epilepsy, glaucoma is swelling within the eyeball, certainly gastrointestinal problems, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, or swelling of the tummy in any sense. Hepatitis C, it's a swelling of the liver that makes it more painful. And then you've got a number of different arthritic conditions and any kind of pain from broken backs or muscle damage or bone damage. Keeping down the inflammation is what helps the pain from becoming really intense. And so using it as an edible or a topical for the anti-inflammatory benefits is really important for a lot of people. And there's still a lot of things that we're just beginning to understand about the medical benefits and uses of this plant and how to harvest it and make proper medicines. And if you want to learn how to make good medicines, we'd like to think that our recipe guide is one of the best. If you go to the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club, our recipe book is online there. In fact, if you grab our newspapers, I think Gail handed out a bunch here, but anybody else listening, there's a big pile of newspapers over there that you can grab. And then you can find out any number of things through our web pages. Hempology.ca is the main one. But certainly the Cannabis Buyers Club has got the product guide and recipe book there. And so, and then there's the recreational users of cannabis that need to be considered as well. And that goes on both sides of the sort of fiscal coin, that is. On one hand, I think most people agree in civil society that arresting cannabis users is bad policy. Very few people in today's world will still argue that it's worth their time and effort to try to arrest people that are smoking cannabis. Right now, the effort has gone towards people that are selling or growing it. And our federal government has introduced a series of mandatory minimum sentences to go after people that are growing cannabis, mandatory minimums of 6 months for as few as 6 plants, with extra sentences being attached, 3 months if you've grown in a residential facility or in a rented home or if there's children around. So it's really something that the federal government, with its recent regulations and laws, have come in very drastically against people that are growing and selling cannabis. And it's something that does not matter if it's a medical user that's being caught, even if they have a Health Canada license. A person with a Health Canada license is not allowed to share a joint with another person with a Health Canada license. It's not subject to a mandatory minimum, but these types of offenses are on the books here in Canada and are some of the worst policies around the world now. It's ironic that countries like the United States are shifting in their policies, but here in Canada, what is happening in the medical marijuana industry is a big shift. For the past 12 years, patients have been allowed to grow their own medical marijuana under a Health Canada program that is now being gutted in favor of big business. And big business is going to be taking over the medical marijuana industry in this new medical marijuana program that's coming in next year. And so, I guess I just switched back to medical. I could talk about medical for a long time. But certainly There in Canada here, we're going federally backwards at a time where the community is embracing cannabis. But the laws here in Canada are for recreational users, not progressing under the Conservative government. Well, they are around the rest of the world. Like I said, in Washington State and Colorado, obviously, it's legal now, and people can possess it on the other side of the border and smoke it in bars and things. It's quite surreal, but the world is changing quite rapidly, except here in Canada, where again the laws are being enforced more every year, which is why the Sensible BC campaign is so important. And I'm going to end on that, because our friend Dana Larson has began a campaign here in British Columbia that's got a very realistic chance of changing the laws here in BC to start with, but it will have a ripple effect across this country, I'm quite sure of. And we need to do everything that we can to help this Sensible BC campaign. And what it is it's not making cannabis legal here in British Columbia, but it's telling the police not to enforce the laws here anymore, that the provincial government will not support that and help pay for it in any sense. And so it is something that is within the power of BC. We're the only province that has any kind of usable referendum legislation. That's why the HST ballot was the first one that was ever put before BC or anywhere in Canada. We're quite unlike the United States, where ballots are a very common way of changing law. It's not very common here. It's quite different. And so what we're trying to do here is a very novel thing. And what Dana needs to do and what we need to do is, in each riding across British Columbia, collect 10% of the voting registered voters, I should say, on ballot, or sorry, a petition. And the petition can only be collected between September, October, and November of next year. And so we only have 3 months, or sorry, this year, we only have 3 months this fall to collect a couple 100,000 signatures throughout the province, again, in each riding, not just all downtown. And so we've got our work cut out this fall. Many of us are planning on putting a good amount of time aside to go out on a daily basis, collecting signatures, door knocking, whatever it takes to get people to sign this. And towards the end, we'll be targeting ridings that we need more signatures in. We're really hoping that this campaign will get enough signatures, because once we've got the signatures, we're convinced that we'll win the vote. Actually, the signature collection this fall is going to be the most difficult part, and I strongly encourage everybody to do what they can to collect signatures, not just here in the bigger cities, but in the outer-lying regions where it's going to be much more difficult. So if you want to read more about the Sensible BC campaign, medical marijuana changes, and other things that are happening, again, our newspaper, the Cannabis Digest, is just over there. And I should also mention as well, I've written a textbook for Hempology 101. I teach a free non-credit lecture series at the University of Victoria. It's over and will be back up in September. But there's a YouTube channel. You can watch a lot of the past lectures and a lot of the conventions that we do as well, and all sorts of other things that are on the YouTube channel. But the Hempology 101 textbook here is probably the most comprehensive book on the cannabis plant put out to date. It covers everything from the ancient history of cannabis. You're, I think, going to hear from Chris Bennett later, who's certainly someone I've learned a lot about. And I cover the hemp plant as well, and all of its various uses, the medical uses and recreational impacts of using cannabis. And it talks about the sort of revival of cannabis, the ancient prohibition of it, and recent history in Canada as well. And so I sell them for $20. They're a little bit more than that in stores, but a little bit cheaper if you get them off me. And I'll be hanging out at my booth over there, enjoying the rest of the show. Again, if you want to find out more about my work that I'm doing, you can check out hempology.ca. And otherwise, I'm not sure if the band's just going to... Are you guys waiting until I'm done speaking to set up? I could ramble on forever, but... Okay. So wrap it up and then leave it while they set up? Okay. Cool. Okay. Well, I'd just like to thank the Students for Sensible Drug Policy for inviting me to the event today. It's been a great pleasure being here and doing my first event ever on campus. In fact, I should mention that Hemp 101 is the roots of Hempology 101 that actually started here, now that I think about it, 20 years ago. Back in 1993, the first ever Hemp 101 event was held here. Professor Neil Boyd was here. Dana Larson, who I just talked about with the Sensible BC campaign, was one of the main organizers, along with Ian Hunter. And yeah, so that was the root of Hempology 101 2 decades ago, was here at SFU. So it's really quite fitting that I return here to do a talk. So thank you very much for inviting me here. It's been a great pleasure. And hope you guys all do well in your exams and that. Have a great day, folks, and smoke them if you got them. Thank you.